In 2020, a passage from The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald went viral on social media. It's toward the end of the novel when our protagonist and narrator, Nick Carraway, discovers something painful and irredeemable about his wealthy cousin Daisy and her callous husband Tom. Quote, "They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made." End quote. In a few lines aimed at two fictional characters who represent upper-class America, The Great Gatsby was able to elucidate what so many Americans were feeling then. The passage wasn't just an overt indictment of wealth and privilege. It underscored some of the worst parts of American society and spoke to a disillusionment so many were feeling. 5 years later, that sentiment has not changed. What makes The Great Gatsby a classic, what makes any work of literature really a classic, is that generation after generation, year after year, it articulates an important truth. The Great Gatsby turns 100 years old this month. After a century, in 2025, The Great Gatsby is truer than ever. The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald's magnum opus, an enduring American classic and one of the most assigned works of literature of the past 100 years, is today's feature on the Velshi Band Book Club. Perhaps more than any other novel in American literary canon, The Great Gatsby is celebrated in broad strokes. Most of us read it in high school English class. Everyone remembers the opulent parties, the extraordinary titular character, the green light at the end of the dock, and then everyone saw the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. It's so ubiquitous, so a part of the lexicon that, like Jay Gatsby himself, its reputation precedes it. For this reason, it's worth a reminder on the plot. In the summer of 1922, Nick rents a house in the new money part of Long Island's Gold Coast called West Egg. A Yale graduate, originally from Minnesota, Nick plans to spend the summer learning about the bond business in New York City. Sometimes Nick spends his evenings with Daisy and Tom and their friend, a modern liberated woman named Jordan in Tony East Egg. Soon, Nick learns about a mysterious man, his neighbor named Jay Gatsby, who hosts extravagant parties in his mansion every Saturday night. When Nick gets invited to one of Gatsby's legendary parties, he's confronted with the question of identity, of morality, class, love, and illusion. The Great Gatsby is a masterclass in lyrical and descriptive writing. Fitzgerald is able to convey feeling, nostalgia, excitement, dread, optimism effortlessly throughout the novel. For its relatively short length, The Great Gatsby is brimming with symbolism: the parties, the cars, the music, the Valley of Ashes, the fading billboard of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg's eyes, and of course, the green light at the end of Gatsby's dock. The novel explores so much, but ultimately it's a condemnation of greed and the upper class, an examination of the fallacy of the American dream, and in Fitzgerald's own words, a story of aspiration. In Jay Gatsby's America, self-making and reinvention is at once possible and celebrated and feared and reviled. The critical examination of the unachievable American dream makes The Great Gatsby an obvious choice for book bans and challenges. It's often pulled from shelves. The Great Gatsby has been published for 100 years. Our country has seen massive change since then. We've seen progress and regression, war, mass illness, societal change, advancements, derailments, and a backslide in democracy, and yet still the truth of this novel persists. Today's meeting of the Velshi Band Book Club is officially underway. We're examining an enduring work of American literature, a true classic that's been inspiring writers and readers for 100 years, The Great Gatsby by the late F. Scott Fitzgerald. Here with me to discuss the classic are two experts, Claire Anderson Wheeler and Martina Mayock. Claire is the author of the new novel, The Gatsby Gambit. It's a mystery that focuses on Greta Gatsby, the protagonist Jay's younger sister. Martina is the creator and writer of a musical adaptation of the novel called Gatsby, an American Myth. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for being with us and for being our newest members of the Velshi Band Book Club. Claire, let's start with one of the most famous quotes in the entire novel. Quote, "I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A beautiful little fool." End quote. Daisy speaking to Nick and Jordan about her infant daughter, Claire. Tell me about what this means. Why would she be saying, I hope our daughter is a beautiful little fool?
Yes, absolutely. Daisy Buchanan is probably one of the most memorable characters of the novel, The Great Gatsby. And Fitzgerald, I think, handles that portrayal with incredible nuance and sensitivity, although inevitably through quite a male gaze. Daisy who by the end of the novel we see really as quite a monstrous character, at the same time is in this terrible predicament socially because of the way the world around her is structured. Her function is as a trophy. That is her purpose, that is her value. She has been raised to be acquired by a man like Tom Buchanan and to be chased after by a man like Jay Gatsby. And outside of that, there's really nothing for her in this world. And so I think the torment for Daisy is that she is also an intelligent woman and she's very aware of her predicament. And so she makes this kind of tragic wish for her infant daughter that she will be beautiful and therefore able to sort of ascend in society in the only way a woman of that time could really hope to ascend, but that she will be ignorant enough to be cushioned from the bitterness of that reality.
Martina, let's stay with the topic of the portrayal of women in The Great Gatsby. I want to talk about Myrtle. She's a prisoner, metaphorically within her marriage and her lower social class, and then actually a literal prisoner when her husband suspects her of cheating and locks her in a room. She's one of the most tragic characters in the entire story.
I find her to be one of the most potent, powerful, strong characters. I love what you were saying, Claire, about Daisy. These are both two women who are stuck in their circumstances, but are incredibly intelligent and incredibly hungry for more. I think that was one of the most moving things about re-encountering the book recently, especially when I learned that it was set 4 years after the end of a world war and a pandemic that collectively killed a third of the population. It really helped me to understand the sort of feral hunger that a lot of these people were going into their lives with. And Myrtle is especially one of them. She's somebody who uses everything that she has, which is very little, her sexuality and her appeal to men, to be able to ascend to a level of safety in the way that she can. So she's somebody who I consider very, very strong, and has often, I feel, been represented in ways that prioritize a crassness that I feel is dishonest to what that character truly is, which is a survivor and a striver.
Claire, I want to read a short passage from Chapter 9 where Nick recalls heading home to the Midwest as a college student. Quote, "We drew in deep breaths as we walked back from dinner through the cold vestibules, unutterably aware of our identity with this country for one strange hour before we melted indistinguishably into it again." Talk to me about this idea of identity with this country inside of this novel.
Yeah, I mean, it's viewed, I think, as one of the most American of novels, although at the same time, I suppose, ironically, some of what it's attacked for is this idea of it being un-American. I think Nick and all the characters in it, they have fully imbibed this idea of the American dream, but also are encountering the kind of hostility of the world around them, which is post-war, obviously, and in so many ways feeling effaced and erased from the narrative, which, you know, if someone like Nick and his level of privilege is experiencing that kind of effacement, it's interesting to imagine what that might be like for characters less central to the society of the times. But I think that feeling of questioning and the sense of invisibility is quite pervasive within the text.
Martina, you and Claire are part of literally a century-long legacy of creative work that is either inspired or influenced by The Great Gatsby. What's your sense of what has made this novel so enduring?
I think it's one of the most potent translations of the American mentality that I've ever experienced. It is, if it were just a cautionary tale, I don't think it would have the sort of timeless appeal that it has. But it contains a duality that is central to what I think the American spirit is, which is this gorgeous questing and striving for more, for better, for greatness. That is in itself a beautiful concept, but the ways that we have gone about that pursuit have often ended in destruction, devastation, and pillaging, and the devastation of especially the least cared for of our citizens. And so there's I think that it's a really compassionate, clear-eyed view of who we actually are, the both of us, and I think that's why there's also there's so much space for the imagination in this. It's 198 pages,
yeah.
And Fitzgerald gives you enough of these characters' portraits for you to bring yourself to them. And I think that's also why it's inspired so many adaptations, because it feels like almost a collaborative gift from the beyond that F. Scott Fitzgerald has left for us. I think this is our American myth.
Well, thank you for your contribution to the canon, and thank you to our newest members of the Velshi Band Book Club, Claire Anderson Wheeler, author of the brand new The Gatsby Gambit, and Martina Mayock, playwright of Gatsby, An American Myth.